Perfect. So welcome to our professional etiquette workshop, otherwise known as Top 10 Etiquette Pet Peeves. We are so excited for this workshop today. It will be really fun, super informative. Professional etiquette is such an important career topic that people often wait until the last minute or when they are currently working and in the workforce to learn these skills because of a lot of us are focused on the job search, how to get a job, right? Well, the professional etiquette skills that you will learn today and what not to do in regards to professional etiquette. This will help you not only in your job search, but also in the workforce. It's important to know that there are generational components to professional etiquette. So you might hear Johnette and I talk about old school versus new school because Gen Z and millennials view work very differently sometimes than people in other generations. And so that's also something to be mindful of as we go throughout our presentation today. This presentation may run over time, which is why we are recording this. You will receive the recording after today's presentation. We strongly encourage you to stay for the entire presentation if you are able, but if not, if you need to leave us at 1, we absolutely understand and look out for the recording from us by the end of the day, today or tomorrow. All right, and to share a little bit about who's presenting this presentation. My name is Erin Ahart. Johnette and I are both full-time career counselors here, both career counselors serving all graduate students in the Columbian College of Arts and Sciences. Outside of my role, I also lead a career advice podcast specifically aimed at Gen Z professionals, helping them make the transition from college to career. And one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about today's topic is because I think professional etiquette is something that a lot of times we're expected to know and do, but people might not tell us what is professional, what is the appropriate etiquette for certain career situations. And so that's why we created this presentation today. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Ruffner-Ceaser to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're very happy that you're here. Outside of serving CCAS Career Services, I own a professional services agency where I support mid to senior level career women with obtaining professional peace. And that comes in various forms. And so we're happy to have you here. And like Erin said, this is going to be fun. At least that's our desire. And we want to have sort of a conversation and have some giggles along the way. I think you'll find some things really informative and amusing at the same time. Okay, so today we will be focused on the following learning objectives. You will learn key professional behaviors from email communication to Zoom etiquette. The goal is to help you to understand the difference between casual and professional, including workplace attire and how to be professional while being yourself. We want you to discover what's considered professional in your industry and workplace because it's not the same across the board. And finally, to learn how to build professional relationships and navigate appropriate conversation topics. So, have you ever asked yourself, what does it mean to be professional? Professionalism really refers to the way you behave and represent yourself in a business setting. Although each company, each organization, each institution may set its own standards and behaviors, a professional attitude really is important because it can make you trustworthy and reliable, which are two critical staples in a professional environment. Employers and colleagues alike prefer to work with people who are polite and considerate and look nice and speak well and all of those things. And this is why exhibiting professional, or one of the reasons why exhibiting professional behavior that matches your industry standards are really important. When you are known as somebody who is reliable, you are more likely to be given added responsibilities and be exposed to increased job opportunities. So it is critical to really digest the word professionalism, what it means to you, and what it means within your particular industry. Okay, sorry. So as we move forward, this presentation is it's divided into 7 parts, 7 characteristics that are, we won't cover everything. We are just trying to give you some foundational components as it relates to 7 characteristics of being a professional. They include being an excellent communicator, respectful to others, being well-groomed, having a strong work ethic, being a dependable team player, being honest, and flexible.
All right. So starting off with being an excellent communicator. What does this mean to be an excellent communicator? It is necessary at all stages of the job search, at all stages of your career. With communication, we often think about verbal communication, nonverbal communication, and written or email and text communication. You all know what those mean. But the top aspects and what makes someone a great communicator is if they communicate with clarity, confidence, and awareness. And so let's quickly talk through each of those 3 top aspects with some job search examples. So many of you, or a few of you attending this presentation today, might know about the upcoming Career Exploration Expo this Friday, tomorrow, from 12 to 4 p.m. And so, one time during the expo when you might want to be demonstrating your communication skills is if you are approaching an employer with your elevator speech. Now, speak clearly. Clarity means that you are clearly communicating your points, your thoughts, your ideas to the other person listening. They should be able to understand you. And clarity often involves preparation. You need to know what you're going to say or what you're going to type out in that email. And at the Career Expo, you again need to know about the company. So my friend Anthony stepped into a recruitment role at a medical device sales company. And my friend Anthony was recruiting at Penn State University's large career fair in University Park, Pennsylvania. He said that only a few students out of the hundreds that he spoke to that day at the career fair stuck out to him. And the reason was because they came prepared with information that they had researched about the company and knew what questions they wanted to ask the employer. So keep this in mind for Friday's Career Expo here at GW, but also remember that clarity involves preparation. That was Anthony's pet peeve. So that's one of our 10 pet peeves. But you also, in terms of clarity, one of Johnette's pet peeves is when people mumble or don't project. So they also need to understand you. And that's a perfect segue into confidence. So speak confidently. Back to the words trustworthy and reliable. When you believe in yourself and what you are saying, other people are much more likely to believe you. So if you aren't confident in your skills and the value that you bring to the table at the career fair, out of hundreds of people that recruiters talk to that day, why should they believe that you're the right person for the role if you don't know if you're the right person for the role, right? So that's why communicating with confidence is so important. If you are in a staff meeting and you have a great new idea of how to strategize on a specific project you're working on, or just idea you're sharing in general at a staff meeting, you want to communicate that idea with confidence. So it's more likely that your staff members will want to move forward with your idea. So down to awareness, this goes back to reading the room. Are you talking for too long? Are people's eyes glazing over in a presentation? You need to be aware of this. And what helps with this is trying to think about what your audience cares about. If you are emailing someone in upper leadership, they care about the high level bullet points. They don't want to know every single thing that you're doing. So this goes back again to reading the room, understanding your audience. Everything I just said does not just apply to the career fair. It applies to the interview context. You don't want to speak too long in an interview. It applies to the workplace. Come prepared to every work meeting that you have scheduled on your calendar with your main points that you want to bring up and the questions that you have. And being aware, being confident, doing your research and coming prepared and communicating with clarity, all of that shows that the person you're communicating with is a priority for you.
Okay, so let's transition into email communication. Now, email is a critical component of professional communication. Of course, we use it every day, all day. However, this form of communication can be tricky because the only thing the receiver has is your words. And your words alone, without any other cues, nonverbal cues, can be misinterpreted. They can also be the difference between obtaining or not obtaining a response, uh, particularly in the time that you expected or at all. So let's break down email communication a bit. So it is important in professional emails to use a subject line. Use words that are relevant to the message. So if you are following up, for example, about a professional development workshop, you could say professional development workshop on December 3rd, something to that effect. When you do that, it helps the receiver to save time by categorizing and maybe prioritizing your email, which helps them to help you to get a response in a timely manner. I think this could be one generational thing as well. I'm a bit older than Erin. I'll say it that way. And so I have learned that folks in my generation and older are maybe not as tied to their email or phones as someone who's few generations after me. And so the expectations become very different in terms of when there should be a response. And I think for later generations, there's an expectation that it's quick, 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 now, now, now. And that may not necessarily be the case, or folks may not be on the same timeline, and folks just may be super busy. So please, I encourage you to use a subject line. Next, a very simple thing like hey versus hello. If the person you are contacting is not your friend, it is, I believe, unprofessional to greet them with a casual hey. Hello, hi, or greetings is more appropriate. The same goes for thanks versus thank you. If you don't have a relationship with the person you're communicating with via email, take the time, go the extra mile to add the word you at the end of thank. Thank you versus thanks can also apply to one's level of gratitude. So, for example, if I supported you with obtaining an internship or connecting you with someone who could open up an opportunity for you, if you sent me an email and said, thanks, Dr. Ceaser, that's really casual to me when the opportunity could have been like really significant for you. But thank you carries a different weight, carries a different level of gratitude. So keep that in mind when you are communicating in professional spaces. The next is be sure to use a person's title. Um, uh, Dr. Ceaser, Miss, Ms., whatever the case may be, if you know the title. It's just a respectful thing to do. Now, again, if you have more of a personal relationship with that person, you may be able to forego that, but at least start with using the title and allow that person to let you know that you don't have to be so formal. Um, and if you see the pro tip, asking is a part of great communication. For example, how would you like to be addressed? I appreciate being asked that question. And I'll be honest with you, there are different settings where I use my titles. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But having someone ask me how I would like to be greeted is a courteous thing to do. Next, let's talk about following up. Um, so, if you've been engaged in a networking conversation, an interview with someone, uh, or just any type of professional conversation where you've met the person for the first time, it's great to follow up, right? And for example, if you could just say, hey, it was great hi, hello, greetings, it was great meeting you at, and I would love to continue the conversation as I'm interested in X. The other way to follow up is if you are expecting information from another colleague, and you have not received that information, be it a colleague or professor, and you have not received that information within a predetermined time frame, or just several days has passed, it is okay to send a gentle reminder, a gentle follow up. I actually received one of those this morning from a student I met with at the end of the day yesterday. And she gently said, Dr. Caesar, I look forward to receiving X information. That's perfectly okay to do. Don't feel like you are badgering someone or you're being too pesky. You need the information and it's okay to follow up. And many times people are appreciative if you're sending that gentle, respectful email. Hello, Dr. Smith. If you recall from our conversation yesterday, you promised to send, would love to receive that information. It's perfectly acceptable. And also, thank you emails are extremely important. Um, if you don't do it, it may appear that you are unappreciative of a person's time and contribution. You can again send one after an interview, send one after a conversation. And I want to express the importance of time. Time is something you can't get back. Once it's gone, it's gone. And so value a person's time by saying thank you, by showing up on time, by doing all of these things to say, I appreciate you. And, an example, Erin and I work together all of the time. And so we don't necessarily say thank you each time we interact or collaborate with one another. But we will insert it from time to time just to say, I appreciate you for doing that. Even though what we're doing is a part of our job, saying thank you can really go a long, long way.
So back to what Dr. Ruffner-Ceaser just said about time, response time, and consistency. So another reason why time is so important is because it demonstrates that both your work and their work, especially if they're requesting something from you, is a priority. Ideally, you would try your best to respond to all emails within 24 hours. That's not always possible if you're being inundated with information, but especially during the job search, if you don't apply within 24 hours or at a maximum within 2 days, that employer might not think that you're really serious about accepting their offer to interview or accepting their job offer if that's what they're reaching out to you about. Back to awareness, if you receive a message that seems to be urgent, if you receive a message from upper leadership, and by upper leadership, we mean anyone who is your boss's boss or above, and your direct supervisor, that should be a priority too. But if you receive anything from someone who is above you, um, you should be responding to that email as soon as possible, and that should be a higher priority than emails down the chain. Consistency. So consistency contributes to your reputation of trustworthiness. If you are responding to different people you work with vastly different tones, then people might have different opinions of you. It's important to be yourself. However, back to that concept of awareness, it's also important to cater your tone and how you communicate with people depending on where they are in the organization. So, again, with upper leadership, you're probably going to be more formal when you're responding to an email from someone of that level at that caliber, because again, that shows them that they are a priority to you. You are rarely saying, thanks, so and so, like Dr. Ruffner-Ceaser said in that context, and would always be addressing someone at that level with their title. Um, and so, yes, be consistent with your communication and yet still be flexible and adaptable depending on who you're talking to. Communicate your progress on important and time-sensitive tasks with your team and your supervisor. So back to consistency, we'll talk more about workplace scenarios and situations later in today's presentation. But part of being consistent is always also providing updates. If you are the one who's letting weeks and time go by when other people are expecting work from you, even if there may not be an immediate deadline, communicating that you're working on this and that you're at a certain point in your work will just help them to know that you're trustworthy and reliable and doing what you need to be doing. So, moving on to being respectful to others. What does it mean to be respectful to others? Um, just like what does it mean to be professional is highly debatable, what does it mean to be respectful is also highly debatable. It not only depends on the workplace environment that you're in, but on the values, personalities, cultural backgrounds, and upbringings of all of the individuals who are working together as part of a team. But even though we're all so different and we might value different things as respectful or disrespectful, there are 6 different components of respect that are pretty universal. And those are time, productivity, contributions, privacy, personal and professional boundaries, and workplace norms and expectations. So I'll go through what we mean by each of these components. So we've already talked about time. You want to be respectful of other people's time. Stay on topic during meetings, especially if it's an urgent matter. You're not going to be providing updates about your weekend if there's something you need to get done as soon as possible. Do your work in a timely fashion, meeting deadlines. Johnette already shared that time cannot be regained. You also want to be respectful of others' productivity. And by that, we mean others' ability to do their work. And so if someone else is relying on you to complete a task that they need you to complete in order for them to do their job, you are prioritizing that task. If you work in a shared space, perhaps maybe you work in a situation where everyone has a cubicle where you can easily hear other people's conversations. You are being respectful of the level of volume that you're speaking at when other people are working directly next to you. You're also being respectful in Zoom meetings. We'll also talk about that in a second too. Not eating or crunching loudly, especially if you're unmuted on Zoom, because that's distracting. Personal hygiene. This is a form of respect, and not keeping up with your personal hygiene can also be a distraction for someone else. It can be difficult for people to concentrate in a meeting when that is something they're hyper aware of. Contributions. Give credit where credit is due. You don't always need to be saying, and I want to thank this person for doing XYZ, especially if that's part of their job or their task, like Johnette already mentioned. However, I think a way to consistently show that you are giving credit to others and just appreciative of their work is celebrating them in front of them directly, saying, thank you, this was great work. I really appreciated this. And that's to the person who did that work, but you're also speaking highly of them to others in your team and in your workplace. This is not This should not be something that you're doing to manipulate people to go overboard, but you're just really showing your gratitude and appreciation. And I think that's a good way to give credit where credit is due. If you do not give credit where credit is due and you either take credit for someone else's work or you don't acknowledge somebody else's hard work, especially on a large project, that is something that can really kill your reputation. Be respectful of people's privacy. So one good example of this is if you're taking a Zoom call, you want to be respectful of if there are people in a shared space with you who can listen in on the Zoom call. Maybe the people who you're speaking with on Zoom don't want anybody else to hear the conversation. Think about things like that. Um, Johnette's pet peeve. If you are aware in advance that being on camera is preferred for a certain meeting, you want to try and honor that request by moving to another location. For webinars, it's different. Some Zoom webinars, you don't even have the capability to turn your camera on. But if you know it's a meeting in your workplace, if people might want to see your nonverbal communication cues, it's important to keep your camera on. Um, and staying on the topic of Zoom, take Zoom calls from your computer, not your phone, because phone calls, especially where it's your phone is not stationary, you're moving around, and maybe I've been on calls where people are driving and taking Zoom calls while they're driving. That's distracting. It's unsafe when you're driving, but also they're not able to see you as clearly as if you were on your computer. Personal and professional boundaries. So one example of a personal and professional boundary might be how much you share about your personal life. When you first step into a work context, especially in a new environment, you don't want to overshare about your personal life. And in this situation, I think it's really important to practice being an excellent observer. Yes, you have your own personal and professional boundaries, but you want to make sure that you understand the workplace norms and expectations and the environment that you're entering into. And I see a comment or question in the chat. Suggest we'll come back to this question in a second. So continuing with personal and professional boundaries, um, if you assume if you are comfortable sharing about yourself, don't assume that others will be comfortable sharing that about themselves. Um, Something that Dr. Ruffner-Ceaser and I have talked about before is that it's important to establish a rapport first. There are some conversation topics that are typically off limits. Politics, religion, and money are a couple of these conversation topics. The reason being is because when you're hired in a workplace, we like to think it's more than just a transactional experience. However, this is a contract. You are an employee being paid to complete a certain task or provide a certain service, and everyone has the right to come into work and feel safe and comfortable doing that work. And so that is why you want to try and avoid conversation topics that could make anyone uncomfortable. So establish a rapport first, be observant. Don't ask personal questions. For example, how old are you or are you pregnant? Those are great examples. Allow people to share what they want to share with you first. Then that may open up a door, and the sharing, the rapport building is gradual. It happens over time. So let it happen naturally. Physical boundaries. Hugging is one. I personally am a hugger, but I don't do that with my work colleagues. I recognize that people have, personal space boundaries. And so be thinking about that too and your physical proximity to others. Workplace norms and expectations. I talked about already how you may have your own boundaries, but you also need to be cognizant of the environment that you're walking into because that environment has already been established before you got there. Um, the norms and expectations hopefully are being set for you up front by your supervisor when they're sharing with you expectations of the workplace when you're hired. When you first start a position is also a great time to establish your boundaries early. Um, but one tricky situation that I recently heard about is my friend supervises a new employee that was recently hired, and the expectations that were already set as a part of that working environment is that they have meetings with clients every Tuesday and Thursday from 12:30 to 1:30. The new employee, um, which was commendable of this person, wanted to set her boundaries early and said, I take lunch every day from 12 to 1. Now, this is a nuanced, interesting situation because you typically would not have meetings scheduled in the lunch hour from 12 to 1. We want to be respectful of employees' time and times when people typically take lunch. However, these meetings were already established. It could be that those clients, that was the only time they could have these meetings. And this person was also a remote employee and could take their lunch at any time. So a conversation in that situation needs to be had because there's a difference between the preset expectations of the workplace and the boundaries that someone is coming in with. And so maybe a conversation with human resources or their manager needs to be had about why are these meetings scheduled during the lunch hour and how can I be flexible and be adaptable while still having time to eat my lunch. Johnette, do you have anything else to add about respect?
No, I think you've covered it.
Okay. So let's move on to Zoom etiquette.
Yes. So, Zoom etiquette. I think the most uh, comedic time for using Zoom was during the peak of COVID, when so many people did not know how to use the platform. And unfortunately, it feels like so many people still don't know how to use the platform. So, tapping a little bit on the privacy aspect, it's important that you not take screenshots, cell phone pictures, or otherwise record meetings without permission to do so, especially if it's a one-to-one kind of meeting or a team meeting. Um, and if you happen to do it, I know there like presentations like today, you may be taking pictures of the screenshots for your own professional growth and development, but I'm talking about, again, like more like one-to-one or private team meetings, and you're taking recordings of that. That's not trustworthy, and it suggests that you're not a reliable, well, I'll say more trustworthy than reliable. So just keep that in mind. It's not okay to do that. Next, take notice of where you're taking Zoom meetings. So if you're at home, be sure that you're in a location where uh, roommates, household members are not walking behind you. Inform the people in your space that you will be on a Zoom meeting. So keep that in mind. And to that end, it's a great idea to have a background or to blur your background, which is a feature within Zoom, so that you couldn't, if someone passes by, you can't clearly see those individuals. Erin has already talked about not eating uh, on Zoom calls unless it's a lunch meeting and everyone is eating. Sure, take occasional sip of water, coffee, or whatever, but having a full blown meal is probably not a great idea. And take these calls. Don't take these calls in a crowded location. It's distracting to the person on the other end of the meeting. And quite frankly, it is disrespectful. And I want to add to this, take these calls. Erin mentioned not doing meetings, some meetings on your cell phone. Sometimes you can't avoid it, but to the extent possible, prepare to have these meetings in a place where you get good internet connection and ideally on your computer. It just makes for a better conversation. And that also taps into time. So, for instance, if I have a one-to-one advising meeting with a student and the student decides, well, it's a great day and I want to do this outside, that's probably not the best place because there could be distractions, there could be noise, and you may not have the best reception, which limits our time for you to go inside to find a better location to have the call. So keep all of those things in mind. Some things you do want to be mindful of are still dress appropriately if it's a professional meeting. Um, I'm not saying that you have to be a, a blazer and all of that, but a nice sweater. I don't know that for professional conversations, a hoodie is appropriate unless, like Erin and I sometimes have one-to-one meetings where it's just she and I, and no one else is joining the conversation. However, if our direct report is joining the conversation, then we probably want to spruce it up a little bit. Also, avoid multitasking, meaning checking emails, answering phone calls, texting. We can see you. If your camera is on, we can see you. And so it's important to think of Zoom meetings like if we were face to face, which we are face to face, just virtually. And so I don't know about you, but when I'm talking to someone, I like them to have some eye contact with me. If they're looking elsewhere, it makes me feel like you're not paying attention and what I'm saying is not important. And so that could apply to others as well. If you are in a group Zoom meeting, don't just unmute and start speaking. Raise your hand. Don't cut individuals off. And finally, join Zoom meetings on mute. Don't join with your camera on. I can't tell you how many Zoom meetings I've been where folks were having other conversations in the background. Just be mindful of your mic. And I'm not, please don't feel any kind of way about what I'm saying, about to say next, is that it's nice for folks to be on camera, especially if it's a small group. And it's definitely important if it's just you and one other person. And I know this probably sounds like, well, of course, but I've seen people do it. If it's just you and one other person and you're not on camera, that's weird, right? It's it's a little weird unless your camera's not working. But be ready, be camera ready enough to be on camera so that you can and the other person can be a part of the full experience. And two, when someone is presenting, having you on camera is helpful because it's an interesting process to talk to, not knowing who you're talking to. And so speakers can feed off of nonverbal cues just to know, is what I'm saying resonating with you? Are there head nods? Are there smiles? With the camera off, there's no way to see that and determine that. So think about that the next time that you are on a Zoom meeting and you're wondering how to be and turn the camera on or off or whatever the case may be, that these are nice tips to use when having those kinds of meetings virtually.
All right. So moving on to LinkedIn, another virtual medium that you might be using and you should be using if your job's, especially if you're job searching. So here's some do's and don'ts. Do not request to connect with someone who you are interviewing with until you are offered the position. As someone who has been on the hiring side, hiring for multiple positions, this is my pet peeve because it puts me and the hiring manager in an awkward position. As a hiring manager, I don't want to give preferential treatment to anyone. So I can't connect with one person who's interviewing, but not connect with someone else if they have not requested to connect with me. And I also don't want the candidate to think that because I've connected with them on LinkedIn, that somehow I'm going to give them the job, because that it doesn't mean anything if I were to connect with them. Um, don't request to connect with someone without adding a message about who you are and why you want to connect. LinkedIn is such a great networking platform, but networking, while it is about quantity, it's more important that there are quality connections. Those are the people who are going to truly help you in your career. Requesting to connect with someone with no sort of connection beyond hitting the connect button, that's one of my pet peeves. Um, I know from another career counselor who works here at GW, one of her pet peeves is when people comment interested in the comments on job postings from recruiters on LinkedIn and expect that that recruiter is going to reach out to them. But all they've said was the word interested with no follow-up on the job posting. But there are some things that you definitely do want to do with LinkedIn. The first is give value before you take. Again, LinkedIn being a networking platform, not everyone uses it the way they should. And so LinkedIn can become a platform about complaining about qualms they have with their workplace. LinkedIn can become a platform about bragging, where people only post when they've recently acquired a new position or achieved something new. But if you are providing value, creating posts that not only contribute to your professional brand, but also give someone a helpful nugget of information, that is really awesome and something to strive for. But when you're connecting with someone, if you're asking for something from them, you should pretty much always start by sharing how you can be helpful to them as well. On LinkedIn, you want to present yourself in a professional light on your profile. Your profile should convey future CEO, not someone who's doing this and using LinkedIn the way they would on TikTok or Instagram on the weekends. Um, while we're talking about LinkedIn, you also don't want to abuse hashtags. There are people who put hashtags and emojis all over their posts. That's unprofessional, kind of tacky. And then I mentioned that sometimes people air on LinkedIn certain issues they have with their workplace. You don't want to air your dirty laundry, talk about a bad boss that you have or had. Um, keep it off LinkedIn. It might feel good to rant in the moment, but it screams unprofessional to anyone who's considering working with you. Because if you are speaking badly about a prior workplace, maybe it's warranted, maybe it's not. A future professional might see this and think, oh, if this person is unhappy with something, are they going to air that to the world? Um, we don't talk about social media a ton throughout this presentation, but while we're talking about virtual mediums, we might as well just get into a couple things with social media. Um, it's important to rapport is so important because when you're connecting with people on maybe Instagram or Facebook, a professional line is being crossed no matter what. You're hearing about someone's family. Maybe you're hearing about someone's political views if they post that personally. You could be hearing about trips that they've taken, pictures of them at the beach, pets. These are all things that might be fine to talk about in a professional context, but it's now taken to someone's personal social media account and not LinkedIn. So it is totally fine to ask for permission, and I would even suggest that before requesting to connect with someone on Facebook or follow someone on Instagram. Um, Johnette, do you have anything else to add about personal social media accounts?
Yeah, the only other thing I would add is be mindful of your personal social media account. Some employers do ask for access. What is your handle? And so, wanting to be able to see what type of person you are, how you're representing yourself. Now, I don't know the legalities of whether I don't think you have to provide that information, but if you have a public profile, folks are searching. they're definitely searching for you on LinkedIn to see what type of content you are generating, providing, and offering to get a better idea of who you are. So always, always, always keep that in mind.
Hmm. And one last thing while I'm thinking about it, my younger sister is actually TikTok famous. And so she is so easily searchable on the internet. She was sponsored by the NFL to make videos for them. And so she actually pretty much has to talk about her TikTok account on her resume and on her LinkedIn profile. And she's turned that into something that adds to her professional value because she is going into a communications related field. And so talking about that brand that she has been able to build with her followers has been helpful to her. But if you know that you will be easily searchable in that context, whether you're using it on your resume or on your LinkedIn, also be prepared to address that. I know that's a very specific, rare scenario, but I thought it would be helpful to share.
Yeah. Erin, if I could also add that many organizations now have a social media policy. So you want to
Mm,
make sure what that policy is for your organization. And I will say there can be a tightrope that one walks if they are working for an organization, but they also have their own business, right? And so some of the content that's shared may not necessarily be in alignment with the organization where you work. So you need to be aware so that you're not getting yourself into any type of professional trouble, and just being really mindful of what you put on social media platforms, especially if they're professional platforms like LinkedIn.
mm,
All right. So we are on corporate chat etiquette. So there are many types of corporate chats. It could be the use of Microsoft Teams, Google Chat, or some other internal platform that your organization uses. I know that we have one in our office, and lots of information gets shared. And regardless of whether it's relevant to you or not, you still see it. It still pops up on your screen. So, with that being said, don't treat corporate chats like social media messaging or your private text. This is a workplace tool. It is not the place to share, for instance, what you did over the weekend. The other thing to be mindful of, and I know people who have gotten reprimanded due to this, individuals thought that their chat at the office was private. Well, some organizations have IT department monitor the chat. And so assume someone else is always reading your messages. So keep that in mind, and proceed cautiously as you use that medium to communicate with others in your department or your organization. So don't use the chat for sensitive or personal discussions. Take that offline, make it one to one, make it a phone call, or make it an email, may be more appropriate. Also, as it relates to the chat and expectations, again, going back to time, an immediate reply from others may not happen because they may not be monitoring the chat as closely as you are. So give people um, some room to respond, with the understanding they could be in meetings working on something else and not as tied to their computer or phone, and in their ability to respond as quickly as you may or you may expect. Also, don't overuse the chat feature. Ensure that there's some value in every chat message that you send. Asking yourself, does this need to be sent via this medium or some other way? And is it related to work? So very, very important, because like I mentioned, for our office, we have a chat. And if I'm talking about, I don't know, what I did over the weekend, folks are going to get really tired of that. And it can be annoying, especially if you're already getting messages that aren't relevant to you. And so they continue to pop up on your screen. It can be distracting and just completely annoying, if I may be honest. And then also don't overuse emojis, memes, stickers, gifs. When it comes to injecting a level of fun into your digital conversation, a little can really go a long way. So try to match your emoji or meme GIF usage to the rest of your team. So maybe a thumbs up, maybe it is a smiley face, but maybe not a smiley face, a thumbs up, and a ha ha. That's a bit too much and can really cause you to look unprofessional in that particular instance. So be respectful as we look at the do's of your tone in communicating. So again, like I said about email, all a person has is your words to go by. And sometimes I know we've all received messages and tried to interpret, well, what does this actually mean? What does bolding something mean? What does an exclamation mark mean? Is it I'm excited or does it mean I'm angry? You know, it can be difficult to interpret. So just keep in mind to have a respectful tone. I tend to be overly respectful so that my tone is not misinterpreted. So instead of just going right in to say what I need in a chat, I'll say good morning or hello so that I'm not saying, hey, I need this, period. It's just good measure to kind of set the tone of being respectful, kind, and nice. And respect the expectations that are already established for the corporate chat. So Erin was sharing with me that at her previous employer, they had a chat or a text chain that was used for like emergencies, right? If something is coming up that folks need to know about, that was used, and folks' private cell phone numbers were used for that text chain versus a chat that could be used to communicate, I don't know, something, um, I don't know, something that isn't related to an emergency like a snow delay or something to that effect. But just understand how each medium is used and making sure you use those ways of communicating in the appropriate way.
Awesome. And now moving on to work ethic. But before we do this, actually, does anyone have any questions? Can we take a pause and let's open up the floor? Because I know we've covered a lot already.
Yeah. If not questions, is there anything new, like surprising, that we've shared today? Or you have an etiquette tip that maybe we didn't cover under one of the topics that we've shared. And you can unmute yourself if anyone has.
Have one. It was recommended that if you're starting a new job or somewhere to be mindful of food allergies. So don't bring like a peanut butter sandwich for your first lunch because you don't know if there's someone with a strong allergy to that.
Right. Very good. And to that end, and yes, Anika, we will get to you right now. To add to that, Carrie and others, I'm going to be talking about being well groomed. If you're wearing cologne or perfumes, people have actual allergies to certain scents. So just be mindful of that as well. Okay.
So,
Mhm.
yeah, Anika, and I hope I'm pronouncing that the right way. And I don't know why my slides are advancing. Um, so Yeah, it sounds like you had an interview call, which is excellent. Congratulations. And you're wondering about how to follow up with them to share that you are thankful for the opportunity. I hope I'm getting that right. If not, please let me know in the chat if I'm understanding it the wrong way. Should you send them a standard email regarding the call and that they should let you know if they need anything else from your end, what would you suggest? So I always recommend sending a follow-up email anytime you have an interview, even if it was, let's see. Yeah, I always recommend sending a thank you email to follow up and saying, thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciated the call. And maybe you even include a couple of things that were discussed on the call that really shined and stuck out to you. For example, you could say, I really appreciated learning about this aspect of this company or of this role. And then saying, please let me know if you have anything else that would be helpful that you need from me. Again, thank you for this opportunity. Johnette, do you have anything additional to add regarding Anika's question?
No, I agree with you 100%.
Okay. Emma says that the LinkedIn connection request tips are new. This has been really helpful. Great. I see, Anika, I see your response. That's awesome. Any other questions before we get back to our content?
And we only have a few more slides left, just so that you all know.
Yeah.
Hi.
And oh,
Sorry, I think I interrupted. Yes, sorry. I had a question here related to emails. So I had to go back to responding to, to one of my professors. It's been like around 3 months. I haven't been in touch with him, but I want to get in touch with him to initiate a conversation about any opportunities of any research under him. So, what would be a proper way to start the conversation through email? Like, if I haven't been in touch with him and we were out of touch, and then I want to just ask him about any research opportunities in his lab.
Sure. So, Faruz, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. So, be sure to utilize the subject line, right? It could be, I would like or would like to reconnect, something like that. And then in your email, it's hi, hello, greetings, Professor Smith. It's been quite some time since we last met. I would love to reconnect to discuss X, Y, and Z. And then she provides some context. What have you been doing since your last conversation? Have your interests changed? To basically provide and give a frame around specifically what you'd like to discuss and talk about, and then offer a time that might work for that individual. And if it, and just also indicate if that time doesn't work, please provide alternative dates and times for you all to connect.
Uh-huh. Right. That sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
all right. So I don't see any other questions, so we will keep moving right along. Strong work ethic. So strong work ethic, it's something that is instilled in everyone a little bit differently, depending on how we were raised. What does it mean to have a strong work ethic? But at the root of a strong work ethic is doing the best with your time, the expectations, and the resources that were provided to you. And so this is the only side we have about strong work ethic. But I would encourage you, if you're curious about, are you working hard enough? Ask yourself any of these questions, and then on the right side of this table, this is how I would respond. So if you're wondering, am I doing a good job at work? What I would do is I would check in with your supervisor. In most roles that I've had one-on-one meetings with my direct supervisor every single week, even if it's only for 15 to 30 minutes. And that is something that I hope that you all would have the luxury of doing in your workplace as well. It's pretty standard. Check in with your supervisor and ask for feedback. What are the expectations? How can you as an employee be improving? If your question is, how much time and effort should I put into my work? You should be putting in the expected number of hours for your role, but also being flexible and contributing more time when that extra time is necessary to meet occasional deadlines that it's really important for you to meet. If your question is, I'm struggling to complete tasks at the level I'm expected of me, what do I do? I would be honest with your supervisor. Again, check in with them and check in with yourself. Is the work that you're doing a match for your skills and what you bring to the table? And are the expectations of what you're doing reasonable? Are you being assigned so many different tasks that it would be impossible for any person to complete them? And again, back to the question, how can I improve? I think showing a curiosity and having a growth mindset are one of the most respectable qualities of any professional that you could have. And if your question is, am I doing my best? This is something that only you and you alone can answer. But I go back to pride. It's really important for me to put pride into my own work and feel like I did my best. So ask yourself, am I proud of my work? Am I giving it my all?
Great. So let's talk a bit about being a dependable team player. And as I was thinking through this, I realized that most of us, have been learning how to be a good team player since elementary school or our early schooling when we had our first group project, our first group assignment. And the core and the key to being a dependable team player really boils down plainly to communication, effective communication, advanced communication. So be sure to ask questions to ensure that everyone is on the same page, that everyone is in agreement with the mission, the assignment, the deadlines for any projects or assignments at hand. So ask questions. If you have a question about it, ask it. Don't think it's silly. Don't think everyone else knows, because if you have a question, it's likely everyone else has a question as well. Or your folks are all operating from different understandings of what the project assignment or mission is. So ask the question. Get the work done on time, on or before the deadline, especially when others are depending on you to complete your component of the task. Not doing so makes your teammates nervous, and that's unfair to them, even if you are accustomed to winging it and still getting positive results. Everyone doesn't work that way. So be mindful, do what you said you're going to do on or before the time that you said you would do it. Communicate your progress on tasks, all tasks, even if it's a time sensitive one. Let people know where things stand on your component of your contribution so there are no surprises, especially if your teammates need to do any extra work to ensure a project goes through. So for example, if for example, it isn't done correctly or it isn't completed on time, because you have a circumstance that is preventing you from doing what you need to do, don't be embarrassed. It can be embarrassing, but don't be embarrassed and cause the entire team to fall because you didn't communicate and you tried to deliver during a time where you're not able to deliver. And celebrate others and express gratitude for their achievements and contributions, especially if your teammates covered and supported you when you weren't able to provide and produce your portion of what you were supposed to do. So gratitude, saying thank you, is very, very important. So don't pass your work on to others, right? Don't just leave it. Don't just assume that Kate is going to do it, right? Hold your end of the responsibility up. And like I said, communicate if you're not able to do that and why. It's not enough to say, I can't do it. In a situation like this, you need to explain why you can't do it. You might say, well, that's my business and I'm a private person. No, ma'am, no, sir. In this particular instance, to being a dependable team player, you must provide some level of clarity and transparency about why you're not able to contribute in a particular situation. And certainly, if you didn't show up the way you were supposed to, do not take credit for others' contributions. In fact, like I said before, celebrate the contributions that the others were able to provide, and only take the credit that you earned. So, very, very important to remember that. And remembering these things can definitely go a long way.
All right. And now we have honest and flexible, and our final component will be professional attire and being well groomed. So, honesty. This goes back to being trustworthy and reliable. We cannot communicate the importance of this enough. It's one of the most important values in the workplace and beyond, and it's one of those things that can make or break your reputation. So, here are a couple of instances that I've experienced or I've seen other people do or that I've been told about. And hopefully, these scenarios give you an idea of how you might want to respond in the future. So, with honesty, maybe your supervisor asks you, are you finished with this task? Instead of saying yes when you're not finished with it, that would be a lie. Or if instead of saying no with no explanation, another way that you could respond and what I would recommend doing is saying, I have a few more things I need to finish up on and could get this to you by XYZ time. Does that time work for you? That would be a great way to respond. Let me see. I think we got a question in the chat. Um, Someone says, what do you do when someone takes credit for your work? Great question. This will happen to you at some point throughout your career. Johnette, do you have a response for that?
Well, I think there are a couple of things. I think there are some battles um, that don't necessarily need to be fought. And you have to ask yourself, do I want to fight this battle? There are instances, unfortunately, where supervisors will take full credit for work they didn't really do. Their team did it, and they give the team no credit whatsoever. Do you want to fight that battle? And how far does it get you? So that's the first step. If you decide to fight the battle, and let's just say it's a colleague on the same level, it's about having a conversation. I know that you can be upset, frustrated, heated, but make sure in the confrontation you always keep it professional. You always keep it classy. And you could say something like, Joan, I noticed during today's staff meeting, you mentioned that you did X, Y, and Z. And I had a particular challenge regarding that because, this was my experience with the project. And so I just wanted to bring it to your attention, and then allowing Joan to respond. And again, it's not a tit for tat. Sometimes it's just about communicating, that's a challenge, and then leaving the conversation. It's not about battling back and forth. It's just notifying individuals that what they did wasn't okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And with relationships in general, it's always better to address something that makes you uncomfortable head on instead of waiting an extended period of time to address it, because then it's fresh in the other person's mind. Jonna, I really, really like what you said about that. And sometimes it's also about observing if you feel like there's a battle that you can't fight, if there's a senior person taking credit for your work sometimes it might be in your best interest to move on from a role. And so really be proactive in your reflection and thinking about what you're okay with and what you're not willing to take. But that's a nuanced and interesting question for sure.
Yeah. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Okay. Another situation in regards to honesty. So there is such a thing as over communicating. For example, if an employer is reaching out and offered you a job, which is amazing. Maybe they send you an email after they communicate the verbal offer. They send you the written offer. They say, congratulations. Please respond with your written acceptance by such and such a date. If you're a candidate, believe it or not, some career counselors do give people the advice of saying, I'm deciding between multiple offers right now. Can I have more time to think about it? However, in responding that way, even though you're being honest, you reveal that this employer may not be your first priority. And so that could make the employer feel some type of way about you. Instead, you can just say, thank you for this offer. I'm extremely excited about this opportunity. Could I please have until XYZ date to make a final decision? And that date should really be within a 2 to 3 day time frame to honor the offer that they've provided to you. Another situation might be an employer says, we're offering you a salary of XYZ with generous paid leave and health insurance. I do know someone who responded this way. It made me cringe. This person said, as they were negotiating their salary, could I be offered a higher salary since I'm currently on my parents' health insurance plan and this health insurance that you're offering would not benefit me? No, you don't want to do that. Instead, communicate why they should be offering you a higher salary. It has nothing to do with the fact that you don't need this certain benefit they're offering. You're negotiating because you're valuable and you're communicating why you're valuable and making them want to pay you more. You're saying, thank you for this offer. I'm extremely excited about this opportunity. Given my skills and experience in 1, 2, and 3 quick bullet pointed things, and the average salary range for similar roles. I believe a salary of $75,000 would be more of a match for my experience. Then asking, what is the approved salary range for this position? Because it opens up a conversation instead of just telling someone what you deserve.
Erin, if I could add to that, I know of a young professional, blew me away because he was really bold, went for a raise. They came back with the number and he said, well, I was actually had another number in mind. And here's why. And he was able to break down why he was worth that amount. And he got the amount that he was requesting.
Wow. Wow. There you go. Yeah, it's okay to be bold. It's okay. It's certainly okay to be bold, but you need to communicate why you're deserving. Um, so honesty goes hand in hand with flexibility. You'll need to be flexible since you are being paid by your employer to complete tasks. It is a contract between the employer and the employee. However, you also need to be honest about your boundaries, preferably when you start the position. So I already gave the example of someone who I know who knows somebody else at their organization who is very strict on taking their lunch at a certain time. What this person could have said instead is say, once they got the information that client meetings were between 12:30 and 1:30 on Tuesdays and Thursdays, they could have said, okay, I typically eat lunch between 12 and 1 p.m. However, I'm happy to eat at a different time on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Are lunch meetings common at this organization? And is there another time of day when employees are encouraged to eat lunch so that way we can be present at these meetings? Um, that would be an appropriate response. The difference, though, is if this person has a legitimate health concern and there is that reason why they must eat at a certain time, then that's important to communicate with human resources. So that would be the difference there. Another situation, someone says, maybe your supervisor says, unfortunately, we need to meet an earlier deadline than expected on this project. Can you please complete XYZ project by the end of this month? Instead of saying no, or that won't be possible, a better way to approach this would be to say, given my other responsibilities, that'll be tight. Can we discuss other tasks that I could put on hold in the meantime so I can complete this project by this new deadline? Um, it looks like we got a question or comment in the chat. Okay, awesome. And now our last component, professional attire. Oh, Johnette, you're muted.
There we go. All right, everyone, your professional image is important. Your image helps an organization determine if you fit with the organizational culture. And when I say organizational culture, I mean its values, vision, norms, working language, system symbols, beliefs, habits, etc. And if you will be a good representative of their brand. Your image is one way for an employer to determine if are you a good fit in their organization? Do you reflect the image of the company? So for example, if you are applying to work for a luxury clothing brand, you must look the part before you even get there. And so it is extremely important to be mindful of how you show up, what you wear, how you present yourself in professional settings. Your professional image also informs an employer about your values, professional beliefs, your habits, and your feelings about yourself. If the idea is that if you care about yourself, you will ultimately care about them as well. It also prevents you from being overlooked or undervalued in an environment. It shows maturity, responsibility, it radiates self-respect, self-worth, and it boosts your confidence in how you show up. It's nothing like having on a great power suit, a great pair of shoes when going into a professional environment, that when you look good, you feel good and you show up good throughout your professional day, throughout whatever professional experience you are a part of. And it attracts and keeps wanted attention. When you look great, people listen. They listen. I have an attorney friend who dresses very well all of the time, drives a very nice car. This person shows up, walks confidently. When you see that, you're going to be all ears and you're going to be a believer that this individual can deliver whatever it is they were hired to deliver. So keep that in mind. So that moves us into being well groomed. And the things that I have on this list, these are just reminders to make sure that you're cutting your hair, you're bathing regularly, wearing deodorant, moisturizing your lips and your hands, brushing your teeth. And we talked about applying perfumes and colognes. Do it in moderation because some people can literally be allergic to certain scents, getting headaches, have eye-watering, sneezing, etc. The other thing that I want you to be aware of is some attire, some basics to your attire. Yes, you can do colors, polka dots, stripes, those types of things, but some basics are having a great pair of black shoes, having a white button-down collared top, having some neutral colors, your whites, blacks, grays, browns, so you can mix and match these things and move into professional spaces carefully. I was sharing with Erin one component that I don't know that people think a lot about is are your shoes, right? Wipe them off. They still sell shoe polish. If you can't afford a new pair of shoes, spruce them up with a little polish, put some shine on them, wipe the dirt off. Even your nails, for instance. I am one, I'm a little more conservative in this way in the world where people love nail designs. If you're in the interviewing season, keep it simple. The glitter and little things on your nails, just keep it simple because when you're being hired for an opportunity, folks are definitely giving you the once over. You may not recognize it, but they are giving you the once over and trying to determine just from your image, particularly if the role is a front facing role, do you have the ability to represent our brand well? Do you dress well? Can you speak well? these things are all very critical and important. And Erin also mentioned yesterday about you can have the right clothes, but pair them together. If you have these mix match patterns trying to be different, sometimes that can just be too much and may not be the way, or the mixing and matching may not be the right place to do it in professional settings, maybe outside of that. And we're not saying to erase your personal image or brand, be yourself, but also be aware of your environment and what's appropriate. Okay.
All right. Did someone have a question? Okay. So now as we come to a close, professionalism does vary greatly by industry. And so as you're thinking about, okay, who am I as a professional? What am I going to wear in my interview, in my industry for my next interview? What do I wear in the workplace? What clothes do I need for my new job? Learn about what's professional in your industry. The best way to do this is to do your research, talk to professionals in the field, and get helpful information from them. I personally really loved having shadowing experiences and internships when I was getting to know my industry because I could see firsthand many different versions of professionalism that were acceptable in the industry. What did people wear? How did they communicate? How were they casual versus professional? So conduct internships or shadow multiple professionals in your field at different companies as well. Look at your professional association. I'm a big proponent of signing up for emails from those associations to learn about what people are saying in the industry. Seek mentorship, conduct informational interviews, follow leaders in the industry on LinkedIn, and become a professional observer. I know we've said this already, but observe, 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 and then adjust your behavior, how well you're groomed, how you speak, how you communicate, adjust it to the environment, of course, while still being yourself. If you've chosen the right industry or workplace, it shouldn't feel too uncomfortable for you to follow their professional standards. So also notice that too when you're choosing what industry you want to work in. Um, No, oh, one more thing I remembered. Johnette and I spoke about this yesterday too. There are some high level people, tech people at Google and Apple who make oodles of money, do such a great job that they may show up to their workplace in a t-shirt and shorts and it may not matter. And so there are some differences there too. But now moving on to what happens when you are not professional.
Yeah. So, I don't want to call these rules. These are guidelines. These are foundational things to go by. And our hope is that you're not overwhelmed to the point that you feel like a robot where you have to, oh, I have to do all these things. All of what we're saying takes time. It takes experience, being in professional settings to exercise these things. But they're important to keep in mind because your behavior, um, good or bad, could either cost you or help you to obtain a good reputation, respect, opportunities, jobs, promotions, relationships. And to understand and know that the professional world is smaller than you think. It's amazing to me how just you're two people 2 degrees removed from someone else, and your name comes up and you want people to be able to speak well of you, even if they've never had a conversation with you, right? If they can just say, I don't know Carrie personally, but when I see her, she always presents herself well. You want people to be able to speak well of you because that goes a long way. So the bottom line is keep it professional. The way you show up is connected to your professional brand, and the way you show up in professional spaces says a lot about you. So move forward with these guidelines in mind, to give yourself all of the opportunities that you desire to pursue.
Great. And on the other side of that, again, professional etiquette is one of those things that sometimes people do not spell out for you. They don't tell you, you should behave this way or communicate that way. So you're going to make mistakes, especially as a new professional entering a new kind of workplace and industry. Sometimes the best way to learn is through doing. And if someone provides you with constructive feedback and they say, "Oh, you should really do this. This is more in alignment with our workplace expectations and norms." It may rattle you, but be thankful for that feedback because that's going to help you. And that's someone who is willing to take the time to spell it out for you when others may not. It's unlikely that one small professional mess up in this area of professional etiquette is going to ruin your entire reputation across your industry. There are so many jobs out there. But know that as you rise in your industry, you get to be a mid and senior level professional. There's greater risk of acting unprofessionally. Because there's a smaller pool of leaders, and as a leader, you're expected to be a role model for other people in your organization. All right.
You all, thank you so much for being here and staying 30 minutes beyond the time we were supposed to end. That suggests that we have provided some information that has been very, very, very helpful to you. And so we appreciate you for registering, for staying the time, for asking questions, for engaging. So thank you. This is our last session for until April. We will come back with more career readiness workshops starting on April 2nd with Interview with Ease, on the 10th, LinkedIn Construction, and on the 16th with LinkedIn Professional Branding. And these are all places where everything we've shared today can be used through these particular instances in interviews and on LinkedIn. So please be sure to join us again in April. We want to open the floor for any additional comments, questions, or concerns before we close today's presentation. Oops. Thank you all so much. Very glad that you found the information helpful. Thank you.